The rain hammered the city like a vengeful god, turning the streets into slick rivers of regret. Tires screamed against the wet asphalt, a guttural cry that drowned out the thunder. In that split second, everything shattered, headlights piercing the downpour like accusatory eyes, a woman's gasp swallowed by the storm, and the sickening thud of metal-kissing flesh. Alex Harrington III, heir to a fortune built on steel and shadows, gripped the wheel of his sleek black Ferrari, his world tilting on its axis. He hadn't seen her, or maybe he just hadn't cared. The pregnant woman crumpled to the pavement, her hand instinctively cradling the swell of her belly, blood mixing with the rain in dark, accusing rivulets. As sirens wailed in the distance, Alex's heart, long buried under layers of entitlement, stuttered for the first time in years. But it wasn't fear for her. It was fear for himself. Alex Harrington had been born with a silver spoon so deeply embedded in his mouth that it had warped his soul. At 28, he was the unchallenged prince of Harrington Industries, a conglomerate that towered over the skyline like a monument to his father's ruthless ambition. His days blurred into nights of exclusive clubs, where champagne flowed like apologies he never owed, and women hung on his arm like accessories. Rules are for the help, he'd sneer to his sycophantic friends, revving his engine through red lights just to feel the rush of invincibility. His father, the indomitable Victor Harrington, had raised him on a diet of boardroom battles and backhanded compliments. You're a Harrington. Act like it, or I'll disown the weakness. Weakness was poverty, empathy, anything that smelled of the little people Victor crushed underfoot to climb his empire. That rainy Tuesday night was no different. Alex had stormed out of yet another gala, seething over a minor slight, a rival heir's offhand joke about his latest failed merger. The Ferrari's roar was his therapy, the city lights blurring into streaks of neon defiance. He didn't notice the woman stepping off the curb until it was too late. Emily Carter, though he wouldn't learn her name for hours, had been hurrying home from her night shift at the community clinic, her scrubs still damp from mopping floors. At 32 weeks pregnant, every step was a negotiation with gravity, but joy lit her face like a secret sunrise. She hummed a lullaby to the baby girl kicking inside her, dreaming of the nursery they'd painted soft yellow just last weekend. The impact sent her spinning, her body a fragile vessel in the storm's fury. Pain exploded through her side, sharp and unrelenting, but it was the fear, the primal terror for the life she carried, that clawed deepest. She hit the ground hard, the world narrowing to the warm gush between her legs. No, she whispered, her voice a threadbare plea lost in the rain. Not my baby, please, God, not her. Hands trembling, she fumbled for her phone, but darkness edged her vision, pulling her under like a riptide. By the time the paramedics arrived, Alex had bolted from his car, his Italian loafers splashing through puddles that mirrored his paling face. This is bullshit, he muttered to no one, pacing like a caged panther. A crowd gathered under umbrellas, murmuring judgments he could feel like pinpricks. One man, burly and rain-soaked, shoved through. You hit her, you rich prick. Call an ambulance, now. Alex's lip curled. I called. What, you think I want this mess? He flashed his phone like a shield, but inside, a worm of unease twisted. This wasn't a fender bender with some valet to blame. This was blood. Real, human blood. At St. Mary's chaos reigned. Nurses swarmed Emily like guardian angels, wheeling her into triage while monitors beeped a frantic symphony. Alex slouched in the waiting room, scrolling his contacts for his lawyer. Yeah, Greg, fix this. Whatever it takes. His voice was steel, but his hands shook as he lit a cigarette outside, the flame flickering against the wind. He pictured his father's face, cold, calculating, dissecting this scandal over brandy. One mistake, son, and you're finished. Alex exhaled smoke like defiance, but the rain wept on, indifferent. Emily's world was a haze of white lights and urgent voices. Ma'am, stay with us. What's your name? A kind-eyed doctor leaned in, her stethoscope cold against Emily's belly. Emily Carter, my baby, she's coming too soon. Panic surged, hot and metallic in her throat. She thought of David, her rock, the man who'd held her through every ultrasound, every midnight craving. Where was he? Their last call had been at 8 p.m. I'll be home soon, love. Pick up some ice cream on the way. His voice, warm as hearthfire, had wrapped around her like a promise. Now, that promise felt like a lie as contractions gripped her like iron fists. David Carter arrived 20 minutes later, bursting through the doors like a force of nature. At 35, he was broad-shouldered and unyielding, his flannel shirt rumpled from a day at the construction site, sawdust still clinging to his jeans. But it was his eyes, storm gray and haunted, that betrayed the weight he carried. He demanded answers from the desk nurse, his voice steady but laced with a desperation that turned heads. My wife, Emily Carter. Hit and run, where is she? The nurse pointed him toward the trauma bay, and he ran, his work boots thundering against the tile. In the bay, Emily reached for him the moment he appeared, her fingers weak but fierce. David, the baby. He dropped to his knees beside the gurney, enveloping her hand in his calloused one. I'm here, Em. We're gonna fight this together. Doctor, talk to me, what's happening? The OBGYN, drive. Reyes, delivered the blow with clinical precision. She's in preterm labor, triggered by the trauma. There's placental abruption, we need to deliver now, or we risk both lives. David's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking like a countdown. He nodded, kissing Emily's forehead. You hear that, little one? Your mama's the strongest woman I know. We're bringing you into this world safe. As they wheeled her to the OR, David's gaze snagged on the man in the hallway, Alex, slouched against the wall, arguing with a cop. Something in that entitled posture ignited a spark in David, but he shoved it down. Not now, not when everything hung by a thread. The surgery was a blur of masks and monitors, Emily's cries echoing in David's ears long after they sedated her. He paced the recovery waiting area, fists clenched, whispering prayers he hadn't uttered since the war. Yes, the war. David Carter wasn't just a construction foreman with a gentle smile and a knack for fixing broken things. He was Sergeant David Carter, Medal of Honor recipient, the ghost of Afghanistan who had carried his platoon through hellfire in 2012. In the dusty valleys of Kandahar, when an IED ripped through their convoy, David had dragged 3 men to safety under a hail of bullets, his own leg shredded by shrapnel. The citation read, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. But the medals gathered dust in a drawer, the nightmares did not. He'd met Emily 2 years later, at a VA support group where she'd volunteered as a counselor. She saw past the limp, the flinches at loud noises, to the man who built homes for the homeless on weekends. You're not broken, David, she'd said, her touch a balm on his scars. You're rebuilding. Their love was quiet thunder, nights of shared stories under starlit blankets, days of laughter. Amid paint-splattered chaos, the pregnancy had been their miracle, a pink line on a stick that erased the shadows of his PTSD. Now, as the clock ticked past midnight, David vowed to the empty corridor, if they made it through, he'd tell her everything. No more half-truths about his old knee injury. Hours later, a nurse emerged, her scrub speckled with the evidence of battle won. Mr. Carter, your daughter, Lila, she's in the NICU, but she's a fighter. 4 pounds even, lungs strong. Your wife's stable, asking for you. Relief crashed over David like a wave, buckling his knees. He wept then, raw and unashamed, the sobs of a man who'd stared down death and blinked. But the storm wasn't over. As dawn bled gray light through the hospital windows, Detective Lara Voss cornered Alex in the cafeteria. Mr. Harrington, we've got witnesses, dashcam footage from a nearby store. You blew through that light at 60 in a 30 zone. The victim's husband is filing charges, hit and run, reckless endangerment. This ain't gonna be a slap on the wrist. Alex's coffee turned to ash in his mouth. My father's on the board here. Make it go away. Voss's eyes narrowed. Your daddy's money buys a lot, kid, but not blood. Meet the husband. He's got a story that'll make your silver spoon taste like dirt. David entered the room like judgment incarnate, Lila swaddled in his arms, a tiny bundle of defiance against the world. Emily slept peacefully behind a curtain, her color returning like hope at sunrise. Alex stood, arrogance fracturing under the weight of those gray eyes. Look, man, I'm sorry about your wife. It was an accident, I can cover the bills, whatever. David's gaze dropped to the baby, then back to Alex, measuring him like a blueprint for flaws. An accident, you were texting, weren't you? Saw it on the report. My wife could have died. Our daughter, Lila, might not have made it. His voice was low, a gravel rumble that carried the echo of explosions. Alex shifted, heat rising in his cheeks. Hey, I'm trying to make it right. What do you want, a kidney? That's when David set Lila in her bassinet and pulled a folded paper from his wallet. It wasn't a bill or a demand letter. It was a photocopy of his Medal of Honor citation, yellowed at the edges, accompanied by a faded photo, David in fatigues, bloodied but unbowed, medals pinned to a hospital gown. I want you to understand what you're messing with, Harrington. Not just lives, legacies. He slid it across the table, his finger tracing the words, Sergeant Carter, single-handedly saving his squad. Alex stared, the paper blurring as pieces clicked. Harrington Industries had government contracts, defense, infrastructure. Victor had lobbied hard for those, schmoozing generals at galas Alex had attended as a bored teen. One story stuck. The Kandahar miracle, a soldier who'd turned the tide in a hopeless ambush. You're him, Alex's voice cracked, the arrogance evaporating like mist. David nodded, the weight of it settling between them. I came home a hero to some, a ghost to others. Lost friends out there, pieces of myself. But Emily, she gave me a reason to keep building, not just surviving. And now you've nearly torn that down. The room spun for Alex. This wasn't some faceless victim. This was a man who'd faced horrors Alex couldn't fathom, who'd earned respect Victor chased with checkbooks. Guilt, real and viscous, cooled in his gut. I didn't know. My life's been, he trailed off, the words tasting foreign. Easy, empty. David's expression softened, just a fraction, the empathy Emily had taught him. None of us know until we hit the wall. But you can choose what comes next. Pay the bills, that's table stakes. Be there, learn what it means to carry someone else's weight.